Good morning and welcome to the Abbotsford Entertainment and Sports Center for our year-end press conference with Troy G. Ward, three of our fantastic players who could join us today, and Ryan Walter to finalize things. Troy, if you please.
Morning, everyone. How are we doing? Hello, everybody on conference.
Hey, Troy, how's it going?
Good. Yourself?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Hi, Troy. I just had to turn the mute off. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Dan, do you want to start us off with some questions and thoughts on this news?
The other day after Game 5, you spoke about just the goals and vision you have for this franchise at the end of the season. You sort of touched on it, just so we can delve into that a little bit more and how you achieve those
Well, I guess when we set out this year as a coaching staff, the one thing that we felt was important that we bring this franchise a little further along this year. And not so much did we ever set out by wins and losses or rounds in the playoffs or anything like that. I think obviously as a group we had a goal to compete and play for the Calder Cup. That was the ultimate goal. But along the way, like, we set out to do different things within the hockey department with our players, reach new levels of finding ways to make players better in the development scheme. And then the other thing we tried to reach out and do was just to become a little bit more of a footprint in this community, and that's by way of getting out and working with our front office people and becoming a little bit more deeper into the community as to how we relate ourselves to the people that cheer for us and the people that support us here. So those were the main goals that we wanted to do, and how we summarized all that as a staff. We said, and I've said all year, we wanted to become a program, a place of destination in the American Hockey League for players to develop both on and off the ice. So that was kind of where we were, and we felt that, through the process this year that we went through as a group of people together, we felt that we really made some good strides. And hopefully, whether I speak to it or a player speaks to it today, as we conclude the season, I would say that we made some huge inroads there.
talk about development strategy. Obviously, a lot of guys have reclamation project type seasons. Can you just talk about those guys? Why did that happen?
I think, if we talk about the reclamation projects, if you want to call them that, the players that came in here at different times in their life and maybe reached a new level for themselves and how they developed, I would say that that's just, it was a byproduct of what we did on a daily basis. And I mean that from a coaching standpoint, I mean that from a front office standpoint, I mean that from Calgary management standpoint, and most of all, I mean it from the player's perspective. One of the things that, in order for all of us to grow to the lengths that we want to grow to as people, usually that development is based on how we are supported by our family, and that was our family. The locker room, I will say this about a locker room, it's a very sacred place to a player and to a coach. That's a place we don't like a lot of people to come into. And then in our group of people back there, as a group of players, it was probably the most under-talked thing about as far as development here. And what I mean by that is that group of players had a bond together like no other, and they felt very comfortable in their strengths and their deficiencies within that room, and they always knew they had support. So any player, if you want to say an Akeem Alou or different players that came to us at different times this year, and we had to help them in their development. Even our trades late in the season, Hugh Jessamine, JP Tessweed, all these people were able to play to their potential and reach new heights, maybe because I think of how the players treated each other. That was really critical in our team development.
What was setting a tone like that as coaches?
Well, the tone we set, I think, is just, I think it's in our daily actions. I think it's how we greet and meet our team. I thought it started, I think one of your impacts is, as a coach, is your very first meeting with a team and how you set the standards of how you're going to live day to day over the next little while. I think that's important. It's no different than, bringing a newborn baby into life. That's this family. You got to set the tone for what's ahead the rest of their life and how you're going to raise those kids. And I felt that we did that as a staff, like in every facet of life, and in hockey. Like we told them how they were going to develop, and we talked about video, and we talked about team meetings, and we talked about the things that were going to happen. It was going to become a part of their daily life, and those players, to their credit, bought into that.
A couple days removed from the Toronto series, and just reflect on that series. Is there any differently as a coach to affect different results, or is it just what it was?
How would we affect that series differently? For me, it was, post it now a few days, just let it sink in. I didn't like the timeliness of the series at all, like as a coach. And sometimes that's in our favor as coaches or players, and sometimes it's not. By that, I mean, I thought the turning points that were happened in games 2 through 5, I thought were significant. And during the 14 or 13, whatever it was, I don't even know, like unbeaten streak, we seemed to be more in control of the timeliness of the game. And maybe that was because of the way we were playing, and it wasn't because of the way the opponent was. Certainly the timeliness of that series had to do a lot with Toronto, and maybe some of their special players that made special plays at critical times. That would be one thing I would want to change in that series, and I mean that by the goals for and the goals against, whether they were in succession or the time of the period that they happened in or the situation they happened in. I found those not to our liking. I thought the special teams was going to play a part of that series, and it did. We weren't on obviously the positive end of the power play side, and that was disappointing because that group of people, we have to keep in mind, that is on our power play at that particular time at the end of the year and in that series were also big parts of our team that really carried us through that unbeaten streak and put us into the playoffs. So it's hard to say that I would fault any one of those players at any time. It's just that particular group of people against what we had to go against, we just failed to execute. That's the bottom line. So I thought that was a critical point in the series. Otherwise, those were two things that we felt as a staff post we'd try and fix.
As you close the book on this season, take stock of it, just the personnel here, look ahead to next season, as you have those meetings with capital management. What are the needs here? I guess just sort of heading into free agency.
Well, heading into free agency, our needs are basically, as a coach, I don't control a lot of the player personnel decisions. I control a little bit, obviously. I was a bigger part of this last offseason than maybe Jim had been in years 1 and 2 in Abbotsford. But I would say that we don't really control it as a group of coaches, and I do a little bit as a head maybe, but our needs are just to fine-tune some things around here. It isn't like we need to, change the footprint of how we do our business or how we built this hockey team this year. And by that, I mean they're going to have to make some decisions on current players that we have here that their contracts are expiring, and if what they're gonna do with them. And I mean AHL contracts and things like that. Obviously, they've got to make some decisions. But there's just tweaking. Like, I wouldn't say there's one big thing that I think we need to do or go out and do. And when I speak to that, I'm going to speak into as much as I'm interested in changing the inner workings of our locker room and how it looks and the things that we need to help develop players. When I'm talking about vitamins and shakes and things like that, we play in a place where travel is really a tough thing for us. So when we talk about fixing the current situation we have or tweaking anything or looking at how do we help ourselves, it's as much in travel and nutrition in those areas it is player personnel. Like, my mind goes to those areas before it goes to player personnel because I don't really ultimately control that. I just would say this about the player side of it because I think it's the most interested side as far as the media is concerned. If you're going to develop players in today's game, you have to be able to develop players that are going to be afforded another player alongside of them that can help their development. That's the most critical. And if you're going to be a team of some substance and hopefully play a while at this level, I would say that you have to have goal scoring at this level. You have to have some form of goal scoring. Either it's got to be coming in through the draft picks or it's got to be free agent signings that can really finish and score. Like, that's really critical to have long-term success. Obviously, we had some scoring this year. Could we have more at different times? Yeah, I think there's some players, that have played a lot of games for us this year would have said it'd be nice to have a little bit more finish around me. and we might go out and look to purchase more finishing. But beyond that, we just have to be strong in certain areas, meaning if we have some young players that are in the system that need to develop in their wingers, like we need to make sure that we're solid up the middle again, and we have the Ben Walter type players that can distribute the puck and use both sides of their stick. Like that's most critical for our development of our team.
Troy, Cam Tucker from the Vancouver Sun. A lot has been made in the media and with the Calgary Flames management about the head coaching position in Calgary. Has that crossed your mind since the season came to an end?
Zero.
Yeah.
Not even really interested, to be honest with you. I got so many booklets going in the back room there, and I got more stuff going on. Like, that's my number one focus right now, is just to bring this to conclusion.
How did the exit meetings go, Troy? And was there any general themes that you found speaking with the group of, I guess, 30 plus by the end of the year?
The exit meetings were good. It was. I thought we improved on how we did things here a year ago. I think we took it a step further in the development. I thought we gave each player a half hour, with the exception of a few of, as they're called, black aces. Those were kind of quick situations because they were just, we'd already met with them so many times in the last couple of weeks. But our exit meetings with each player were about a half hour length in terms of that was the set time. Most players took about a half hour. It was kind of myself and John Weisbrod. We just sat down with them and basically gave them an idea where we saw their year at and where we saw them sitting currently today and as they move forward in the organization. Some of those meetings were obviously easy because they're under contract again, and some were more or less we'll wait and see what happens because their contract is up at July 1. So, but they were informative. I would say that we had more of a general manager side to these meetings than we had any coaching side. A lot of times in the American Hockey League, it's more of a what did you like about the year? What didn't you like about the year? It wasn't like that at all. It was more like, here's where you stand right now. Here's where we think you're at. Do you have questions concerning your career? Because each player is kind of in his own personal business. So they're running their own personal business. So John wanted to make sure, as I did, that we heard the player out and if they had any concerns or questions.
Which players were the most surprising to you this season?
As far as surprising, do you mean that in terms of production or just overall, just like in any way? Overall, I would say I thought we had a lot of surprises, and the surprises came in different packages, different times. Like we had some players that really had some outstanding stretches, for Chris Kalanos to come back and put up the points he did in a short amount of time after coming out of the Flames organization and not playing the minutes he was playing down here, and then to get on a little bit of that role. I thought that was a surprise to me. I look at that as a surprise. I think the look at some of our players who played a long time and didn't get hurt, and look at different consistency levels that a lot of players brought. I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but I think any time in the American Hockey League you go through a whole year and you have quite a few guys that were up to right around 76 games. I thought that was surprising in today's game. That's tough to do. At the same time, I thought that our leadership group was surprising in a way. I thought it developed, but I thought it developed very nicely, and the part about that was that I thought a lot of people had a hand in our leadership group. It wasn't our captain and our two associate captains, assistant captains. I thought our leadership group was different, and it had different people that got on board as the year went on. I found that surprising. Typically at the American League level, it's just usually 2 or 3 guys. So there were a lot of surprises. I wouldn't say that any one player stood out to say that he had this unbelievable season. I think when you have some of the successes we had, it's safe to say that everybody along the way ensured themselves a good stretch.
From a development side, can you talk about maybe some players that took the biggest steps forward, and whether there was any that didn't progress as much as the organization would have liked?
Well, I think if you said what one player stood out to me the most, I think that's sometimes what we're trying to hang our hat on. There's a couple of them. Obviously, the Ryan House situation was critical. His statistics at the end of the year relative to his player stats, still weren't outstanding. Obviously, he went through a couple of injuries, and I afforded him a month and a week off, 5 weeks off of training to get himself in a position to compete. but I think just in general, like when you talk about all the changes that a player goes through to go through that and then try and play, and at his age and his position in life, I thought that was a great development story for our team. Like, and I give Ryan full marks on that. But I go back to my comment earlier, like it's only possible with the people that we had in that room. Like to get texts from players knowing that this is happening to this young man. He's not a part of our travel squad because we went on the road for like 2.5 weeks there straight, and he wasn't a part of it, and at that point he had been a part of it. But hearing from his teammates that they hope he's training well and it's going okay, like that's a huge part of the development side. So I would say House was obviously a development side. I think when you look at a bigger development side, when you look at what, certainly since we've been in here in Abbotsford, like one of the people you hear from in the near future here is our goalie Leland Irving. Like that's a huge development story because, you know, he was the main guy here a year ago, and he led us and was our team MVP. And then this year he came back and obviously got us off to a wonderful start right around the first of the year. We were one of the better teams in the American Hockey League. And during that time, he got promoted to the NHL, and he pretty much made a home up there the rest of the year and traveled back and forth at times, which made it difficult to be here. That's a huge development story. I mean, that's one that will obviously not be talked about as much, but it should be because it's another different form of development. And then the last thing I would say about our development is I wouldn't say it's always necessarily on the ownership of the coaches or the particular team down here, but I thought this organization we work in had a need for development this year, and they took a lot of players up, more so than in any of the first 2 years. And I thought that was a huge story that went into how many players got up there and got some significant time this year, and we're very proud of that, most proud of that, probably more than anything.
Hey, Troy, Cam again. Can you just elaborate on how or what it means to you as a coach in the minor leagues to see a player go from Abbotsford to Calgary and then take to the NHL?
Well, Cam, that's the reason why we do what we do, or the reason why we show up every day and put the time in we do is just to, you know, I look at this position as a position, and I say this along with my assistants, like we're in a position to help dreams come true. When you look at a player, you got to look beyond the player. When you talk about a dream, you're talking about parent sacrifices, brother and sister sacrifices. That all led to the point where eventually they got here. And so there's a lot of people out there that not only is an athlete pulling to make that come true, but there's a lot of family and a lot of spouses and people that have probably afforded many, many hours to help this athlete get where he's at. So to me, we're the culminating part of that whole process of trying to put them in a position both mentally and physically and sometimes socially in today's game with our social media and everything else. We're trying to put them in a position that they can make their dream come true. So, you know, it's how we live our life every day, is just to hopefully get that one call where you can tell an athlete he's going up, or at the same time tell an athlete that's been up that he's going back up and he's had some time off, but because of the way he's trained and the way he's playing, he's been afforded another opportunity in life to reach his dream. So it's ultimately why I do the job that I do.
Troy, on that note, and respecting the process and the timing in Abbotsford, there is a job vacancy in Calgary. What do you think about that moving forward, and maybe potentially your dream of making the NHL yourself again?
Well, to speak to the Calgary situation, like to be honest with you, Vicky, I don't really put any time into it just because, as I've told you a long time, like I can't control it. So I don't really tend to worry about too many things I can't control. That's just who I am as a person. As far as beyond that, meaning if there was somebody else, or where's my dreams about coaching at that level, I'll just stay true to what I'm doing every day and try and work as hard as I can. I'm hopefully like any athlete at this level, like you do the best you can with what you have, and you put your best foot forward, and I hope at some point in time, whether it's this organization or some organization out there, that they want to give you an opportunity. And obviously I'm in this organization. I want it to come here. I'm like any player in the organization. Like they want to play and wear the C, and I want to do the same thing, but I don't ultimately control that, and I ultimately will just, hopefully get my work done this week and get back to Wisconsin. I'm able to be a dad. That's my biggest concern right now, is to hold my kids.
We're not going to see States take the Rangers in the
What's Bodog? Gambling website? I wouldn't put any mortgages on that. Or any kind of money. Yeah.
You come from an organization that was involved with the Minnesota Wild.
Yep.
Talking to some of the players, my cousin's son, Brendan Buck, and some of the players in the locker room throughout the course of the season. Why is it in your own, and I know I might put you on the spot, but why is it in your own personal thoughts that you just seem to get the best out of the players, and the one thing that the players, everybody I've spoken to, is they have so much respect for you?
Oh, I don't know. First of all, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that. When I thank you, I just have to say thanks on behalf of my parents. Like, let's be honest here. Apples don't roll down the street. I'm a byproduct of Roy and Kathy Ward and sitting in North St. Paul, Minnesota. So my sister Carrie, who took a lot of pucks off the shin in her younger days, she's like 45 years old now and still probably has bruises and all the things that my passions back then. Like, I guess that where I'm at is I'm a reflection of my own children. I'm a reflection of my parents. And I'm a reflection of Marilyn Bowers, my significant other right now in life. And I'm just very fortunate to be able to do the job I do, and I enjoy doing it.
You talk about Marilyn. Your spouse is always your best half.
Right.
This is the way from Ryan. It's difficult because of the travel schedule you're away. They obviously embrace it, and for that, you've got to be very grateful that you found the one you love.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky. Obviously, Marilyn's not here every day, and she's not a part of my life. She is by way of Skype and by way of BBM, texting, Twitter. What else am I emailing? I'm trying to stay real social here. So she's a big part of my day every day, and obviously I'm very lucky to have her because she gives me balance and she gives me some strength. And but I feed off our players. Like, I don't mean to be redundant, but like if you had the opportunity to do what I just did, like for the last 8 months or whatever it was with these type of men, like I'm a lucky guy. Like just top-notch people, and that's a reflection of the Calgary management and the type of players they assembled here. So pretty fortunate.
This team is so productive in the area as far as the community. Is there anything you think you can do above what you've already done in the community?
Yeah, I think we still have some growing to do in the community here. I think we do. The difficulty of that is and I don't have be a negative about it, but the difficulty is of the players' travel. Like, we come home, and then when we have long stretches at home, I think we make a good impact in the community. But I say, like, to make a better impact, like, you're asking for a lot out of a player when they're gone, and we had, like, I think 14 to 16 players that had girls here this year, some with families more so than a year ago. You're asking for a lot out of a player when he comes home and changes zones and all the things that we do and try and be a good team at home and settle back in. It's just a difficult process, but I still think we have some room to grow there. But I think we're working hard at that. We work real close with the front office group. Barb Roberts was tremendous this year. Like, she grew in that position for our organization. A year ago we had somebody else, so that position changed, but I thought Barb did a nice job. She worked directly with Jordan Sigalette on the coaching end of it, and I thought we did some good things, but I still think there's room to improve. Every team, though, just so we're clear, always has a group of like 3 to 4 individuals that are just substantial. Sometimes those 3 to 4 people carry this franchise in the public. And, those players will maybe have been announced here at some particular time, but, we have the Leland Irvings who live around here full-time. We have the Quentin Langs that live around here. You got now Ben Walter in the area this next year. Those guys are kind of like full-time residents to some degree. Carter Banks this year. We had a lot of different guys that I thought were outstanding. And the other thing that helped us this year, I thought, more than a year ago, is when we were gone, some guys didn't travel because we traveled with more of a smaller travel squad, and that's mine and John's philosophy. Those players were more significant this year. Last year we traveled with a bigger squad, so we couldn't do much in the community when we were away. This year we got some things done. I thought that was really good.
How was year one with John Weisbrod? He inherited you as a coach, arriving after serving technically as the GM of the squad. How was the relationship?
John and I get along very well. We speak on a daily basis. He's a very, very intelligent man. He's a fun guy to be around. he wears you out because he paces like no other. Like, but I mean that in a very nice way. But that guy's always thinking and got something going on. But John and I's relationship is good, and I'm very happy about that.
Troy, I got to ask you, I'm looking at some old stories, and you and I talked on the phone in, I think it was October. You said we're chewing gum, but we can't walk right now, and this was in terms of overall team play. But I got to know, where do you come up with these fascinating quotes that relate to situations with hockey?
I don't know. I don't know where they come from. That's just, again, I grew up with a father that was a coach, and so I lived in a coaching environment my whole life, and he was a basketball coach. And I will say this about basketball coaches: they have a certain wit to them, and they're very, very sharp guys. Like, and I mean that as a very nice compliment to my own father. But basketball coaches, to me, are some of the leading coaches in all of coaching in the industry. They're very intelligent. They're very well thought out. And, I can just tell you from growing up with a basketball coach, he was extremely witty, extremely quick off the tongue. So I would say it's a byproduct of just my father and just growing up in that environment.
What does the offseason look like for you, Troy, in terms of where you spend your time and what you do to get away from hockey or to stay with it, I guess?
Well, I would say maybe this speaks to like the question earlier about like myself and like the team and how we handle ourselves. Like the biggest thing I have ahead of me is to be a father and get reacquainted with Maryland and kind of settle down and just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, out in kind of the woods, so to speak. And then my next biggest thing is I have Hockey and Sons, which I've got to entertain almost 600 people this summer from across the world and bring them into a small campus in southern Minnesota. And this is a camp I've done for 15 years, and I would say it's one of the foundations of me as a teacher. And anytime you go back in the summer as a coach, I think the old adage is you try and sharpen the saw a little bit, like you try and get better as a coach. And this camp here allows parents and child to spend 5 days with me and my staff, and it's a bonding camp where they come and they sleep together, they eat together, and they go on the ice together. And to be quite honest with you, when you have to get down on one knee and teach all summer to kids that are 6 and 7 years old and look them in the eye and try and relate to them, like, it makes you a better teacher. It makes you think of things different. Maybe to Cam's quote as to where some of the one-liners come up, like you have to be pretty quick off the cuff when you're teaching 7 and 8-year-old kids in today's society about how to do certain things and relate with them. But I look at that as that's a huge part of my summer. I've got 3 camps this summer, and it's a family-run business, and it's just something I enjoy, and that'll be one of my biggest coaching focuses for the summer.
Troy, you talk about teaching 8 and 9-year-old kids. What can you tell the coaches of the world how not to treat their kids and let the kids just be fun, have fun growing up and playing the game? There's too much pressure put on the kids, at least from my point of view.
Well, there's a lot of pressure. That becomes a difficult part of it because obviously each family has their own structure and their own posture as to how they want to raise their children. When you do have a captive group of audience like Hockey and Sons, you have all these dads and kids. I mean, we just talk about the bigger picture all the time. Like, it's hard to say. Like, I think every situation is a unique and different situation with one set of parents or a group of parents, but we often talk about just looking at the whole family as the essence of what you're trying to do here, not this one this child. Because oftentimes today's families have multiple children, and to help this situation, we talk about looking at all the children and the development of all the children, not this specific one. Usually when you take parents in that direction, it changes them significantly right away, because there's always seems to be a brother or sister that doesn't play sports that gets left behind on the weekends, where everybody's in the car with the other boy trying to reach this boy's dreams. But when you talk to them about big picture and trying to develop the whole family, it usually sends a different message, and it's sometimes the way the message is sent the best, to get out of the lock of just one child and look at the whole picture of the family. And just because they're in a sport doesn't mean that the person that's playing band doesn't deserve to have everybody go to that concert too. So you just try and change the look of how they look at things.
Excellent. We're good in the room. Cam, Vicky, are you both good?
Yep.
Vicky, you're good? Just trying to get her phone off you.
She's
Excellent.
gone.
Yeah, I still can't get this phone. Yes, I'm good. Thank you.